you ready?
I'm ready.
So, it's really an honor for me to also do this today with you. So for those who don't know the amazing Fiona, she's a pioneer as a certified intergenerational leadership coach, the author of How to Thrive as a Misfit, and also a TEDx speaker. She had a 14-year corporate career in Royal Dutch Shell, where she took up global and leadership roles in finance, digital transformation, and was appointed the youngest global head of operations. Now she's a passionate executive coach, keynote speaker on multi-generational and cultural inclusion, and a trainer for corporate and business schools. She was featured on Forbes, Financial Times, SCMP, and TVB to share insights and support current and future leaders to embrace generational and cultural diversity and inclusion. Overall, super inspiring human, and you touched the life of so many, and it's a real honor today to be talking about how to thrive as a misfit. How are you feeling?
I'm really excited, super energized, and it's just amazing to see so many familiar faces in the crowd, and getting all of your support, just being here, being interested in the book, and a little bit also as a farewell, because I'll be moving in 2 weeks, so it's like a bittersweet moment. I've been here in Hong Kong for 12 years now, and a lot of you here are my friends, so thank you very much for your support in coming.
Thank you. So when Fiona told me a few years back in I think 2020, that you were writing a book, and also about what you're writing it, I resonated so much with it, because I'm actually half Austrian, half Hong Kong, born and raised in a tiny village with 6,000 people in Austria, as the only Chinese family, with the only fully Chinese mom, and I think that a lot of you can really resonate also, and probably also sympathize with the things you have to hear when you grow up in a dominantly white place. And so that's why also when you were talking about misfit and what it meant to be a misfit, I think that who of you feels like or felt like a misfit when they were growing up or like in their career? Yeah, I think that everybody at one point did, and even though we sometimes don't view the other person as a misfit because we see them as at their success, because I also told you, I'm like, you're not a misfit to me. What was your answer then?
Well, I think it's because the way you know me, it's probably like very different. A lot of the adversities that I had to go through, where I felt as a misfit, especially when I grew up as a teenager. And as a teenager, it's already like so challenging to identify your real identity, right? And then on top of that, you just don't feel like you blend in. You always stick out like a sore thumb. So that's how I felt as a misfit. And even in my corporate career, I also felt like I was so different. We're from Shell, and Shell is a very, very male-dominated environment. Typically in the room, in the meetings, I'm the only female. I'm always the youngest, and typically also the only ethnic minority. So I think like we all kind of resonate once in our lives, probably like where we don't really fit in, where we feel like we don't belong. And I wanted to write this book to really help every one of you to feel empowered that even though you feel like a misfit, you can actually also use that to your advantage.
It totally resonated also with me. I once had a job interview when I was 19, and obviously they asked like, oh, tell me about your strengths, and I'm like, oh, I'm a hard worker, because everybody says that. And then she's like, oh, is it because your mom is Chinese? And I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, I got the job.
So are you really good at math, right?
Yeah, I was like, yeah, if it gets me the job, I'm like, okay, yeah, it's because she's Chinese, yeah, we're also really tidy and everything, but so it's really turning those into advantages and just be like, whatever, if it gets me forward. Yeah,
exactly. And I think we spoke about that as well. Like sometimes I feel I only got the job, even as an entrepreneur, I only got the project because I look different, I look younger, I'm probably like the only female, but then you actually helped me and encouraged me to also say that that's a great door opener, right? Like why not leverage on that? Why not really utilize that and use that as your advantage?
So you briefly mentioned a few things that inspired you already to write the book. What other things inspired you to write this?
I think it was always like one of my biggest life dreams to kind of like write a book, but I've never thought about, you know, what is the topic? Like what would interest others to read about? And you know, it was a really big kind of decision to also share my personal story. So all of you here who bought my book, you will actually see quite a few like my deepest, darkest secrets of my life, and it's something that I felt like showing that vulnerability also helped me to get outside of my comfort zone in order to learn more about myself. And the other thing that inspired me to write the book is also working with a lot of like young talents in Asia, well, globally actually. I really wanted to make sure that they also feel empowered and they know how to, for example, kick off their career purposefully, and at the same time also working, you know, with organizations and leaders. Hopefully, when they pick up that book, they also truly understand how can we create a more inclusive workplace so that everyone can thrive, so that even misfits feel that they have some sort of sense of belonging. So I feel like this book is truly like dedicated to those who feel like a misfit, but also for those who feel like they want to know much more about how can we include the misfits so that they can also thrive in their organization.
And it's such an important message and something that we need to also talk about more, that it's okay not to be okay,
Yeah.
and not to feel okay, and also, but also how you can turn the leaf around and how you did it also really bravely.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't happen overnight, yeah, obviously. It was a lot of effort, a lot of people who helped me throughout my career, throughout my life, and I think one of the important things is that truly I find mentorship or having role models really, really important, that you don't feel alone. You can actually speak to them, you can ask them for advice, and for me, like, the role models in my life really helped to shape, to make me the person who I am right now.
When was there a point in your life when you really realized that you're not alone out there, you're not the only misfit?
I think it's when I started to talk to more of the younger people, and where they felt that, you know, they, for example, they study abroad and then they come back to Hong Kong and then they just don't feel like they fit in, for example, like the language barrier. And a lot of my friends here, most of you are overseas, like Asians or Chinese, you know, we speak, for example, German fluently, but we just don't look like it, like a banana, right? Yellow on the outside, white on the inside. And I think especially here in Hong Kong, it's such a transient city, it's such a multicultural city, especially 3 years ago. I think a lot of you probably resonate also with the struggles that I'm going through, and I just wanted to kind of like provide that platform that we can openly talk about it.
Thank you. So, how did you come up with the title?
Well, you know, it's also part of marketing. I mean, let's be honest, right? Like, I felt like a misfit, and in fact, actually, it was my husband Chor. He said that we needed to put that word into the title, and actually, I wanted to have a catchy title, of course, but also something that resonates with me, that represents me, and that represents a lot of us who are going to be reading the book, like my target audience. So yeah, it's kind of like partially also crowdsourcing, like asking people on Instagram, like, you know, what do they love in terms of a title, and really getting also their insights in. So it's not really just me coming up with the title, but it's actually a group effort.
And you had so many answers when you were asking on LinkedIn and Instagram, even not just the title, but also book covers.
Yeah.
Were you surprised by some of the answers?
I think with regards to the title, I guess like I really loved it, and I'm so glad that people loved it too. In terms of the book cover, that was actually a big surprise. So for those of you who are holding up the book, who have a book in the hand, so actually my plan was to put the back cover, that photo, on the front cover, and then this one would be at the back, yeah? But then we heard from everyone that they really loved this photo, and this photo, we actually took it quite randomly at my friend's place. We needed some new LinkedIn profile photos, and yeah, this came about, and everyone just really felt like this is very down to earth, this is very relatable,
Really
and
you.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
really me. So then, yeah, I kind of like stuck with this one, and to be honest, I was also very intimidated to put like my whole face on the front cover. Yeah, it just feels like narcissistic. But I had really great advice from my book editor, and they just felt like this is how the cover should be like.
Thank you. Also, a man would never think that, right?
That's true.
Yeah, Warren Buffett would never think that.
His face like right smack on the middle. Yeah.
So, how does your book help readers?
So for one, I think as an individual, if you feel like a misfit, if you are maybe new in your career, this is something where I wanted to help young emerging leaders as well. So I write a lot around like leadership skills, and it's kind of like sectioned into 3 parts. So the first part is like my personal story, how I grew up in Germany, what kind of struggles I've went through as a third culture kid. And then the second part is about my career in the corporate environment, being 14 years in Shell, having gone through different functions. How did I navigate my career? So it's kind of almost like a self-help book where we also ask you questions. There's some space where you can take some notes. So I want you to use this book really to take notes, to make sure that there are so many concepts, so many frameworks, and I know that we learn a lot of things, whether at work or whether in university, but it's really about taking actions. It's about not just knowing what to do, but actually doing what you know. And then obviously for the other kind of like bigger group that I dedicated this book to is really for mature leaders, for organizations, for maybe HR professionals, if they really struggle to identify like how can we help others to feel included. So I also incorporate a lot around like unconscious bias, making sure that we focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion.
So if we talk about tokenism, how difficult was it to reframe your thinking of tokenism as an advantage?
It was really challenging, and in Germany when I first started off my career, I was really labeled as the diversity token. And in fact, the TEDx talk that I've given in 2020 sparked this idea to also put it all in a book, because the talk that I've given about being a diversity token actually resonated with a lot of people. So I was labeled as a diversity token. In German, they called me diversity Anhängsel. So for those of you who speak German,
diversity add-on, basically.
Yeah, like the appendix of the diversity. And I think it took quite some time. It didn't happen overnight, and it just felt that I maybe got the job because not just because of my qualifications or my competencies, but actually because I'm young, I'm Asian, I'm female. So it took some time for me to realize that why not turn that around as an advantage, use that to my advantage in such a way that I can actually stand out for the right reasons. And with that, knowing that yes, I'm young, I'm Asian, I'm female, I actually got involved in a lot of like employee resource groups, like for example, being on a committee for the Graduates Network, making sure that the graduates in the organization have a voice, that the leaders know what we truly wanted in our careers, and then also later on founding the Shell Women's Network here in Hong Kong. So kind of like using that as my personal brand and really leveraging on it and really enjoying that fact about myself being a diversity token.
So what's your biggest tip for embracing our token identity? I mean, there's so many in there.
There's so many, and like I talk about typically like generations, about age, about culture, about gender as well, but there's so many other diversity aspects or diversity dimensions, right? We have differently abled, LGBTQ+, etc. There's so many more. So I think it's really about seeing that as your advantage, that makes you unique. And when you embrace that, and instead of thinking that you are a misfit, I think this is also about reframing into a positive mindset. Actually, if you do that, that will bring you further, whether in your career or in your personal life.
And also in your book, there's so many also snippets where you actually invite readers to also take a pen in their hand and reflect about their own journey. So that's also something that that I felt really unique about this. Are there any questions? Do we have any questions from the audience? Apart from when Fiona will come back to Hong Kong.
When is your next book?
When is the next book? So
Who asked that? Hi, Pauline! Yeah, good question. Actually, we had that question yesterday also at the event with the students of ISAC. And, it really depends on how successful this book will be. For me, it was always a bit of a barrier to even publish this book because, like I said, I'm not like Oprah or Michelle Obama, someone who is very famous out there. And for me, it's just testing out the waters whether you're actually interested in what I write. I love writing. So we'll see. If this is successful, I might come up with, another book.
Because also you're hinting in your book that when you started writing it, you actually wanted to write a different story.
Yes, that's true. So it actually started off with having a conversation with my dad. So when I left my corporate career in 2017, my biggest critic was my father. So he actually told me that, asking me why are millennials always chasing after their dreams and they're so irresponsible, and that I've wasted all my career in Shell and now, decided to become my own boss. So that kind of sparked the idea to also write actually a generational memoir. So I started actually interviewing my parents while we had COVID in 2020. So we did Zoom calls because my parents are in Malaysia. And I actually interviewed my dad and my mom separately about their upbringing, about their childhood, how it was in Malaysia as also a third culture individual, because my parents are Chinese Malaysians. So my grandparents actually migrated from China to Malaysia, and they're like the second generation. So I heard so many interesting stories from my parents that I have never heard about if I didn't spend time to interview them. But there was just so much material that, if I include my story and also wanting to share more about diversity, equity, inclusion, it just wouldn't fit into one book. So maybe that could be the next book, the generational memoirs, like together with my parents.
I really hope that we're soon gonna read more from you. Thank you so much for inspiring us and really writing this book for all of us misfits, on behalf of us all cultural misfits. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Belinda. Thanks everyone for coming. All right, so for those of you who just arrived, you can pick up the book over there at the cashier, and then I'll do the signing over here. And then please feel free to also come up and have a chat. Like I said, I'm not going to be around too long anymore, but I'm really grateful that all of you came today, spent this hour with me here at Bookazine. So thanks so much for your support. Okay.